there any possibility to go back to the old beliefs? Great question. So let's think of this from like a neuroscience perspective. So what we know is that when neurons fire together, they wire together, right? So when we have neural pathways that are firing and wiring, you can imagine that your subconscious mind has like a whole bunch of these like intense pathways. Now, if you've been telling a story that you're unlovable, since you were 5 years old, where maybe you got into parents and they made a comment that you made me one of your parents, and they made a comment, or maybe you got into a fight with one of your parents and they made a comment that you made mean, that I'm unlovable, and then your whole life you're firing and wiring this pathway, right? What happens is neural pathways, just like muscles, they don't like get deleted, they atrophy over time, they become weaker. Okay, so if you have this set of this sort of neural network of how you perceive things, maybe how you perceive conflict. Every time in your conflict, oh, the I'm unlovable pattern comes up, and I start retelling this story and projecting that meaning, and it's part of my what I'm used to in terms of how I perceive and approach situations. And then let's say you start doing the reprogramming on I am lovable, okay, and here are the reasons why, and you do that 21 days. In that 21-day period, you're going to have two things happen. This set of pathways is going to atrophy, and this new set of pathways is going to have been fired and wired enough that it starts to become its own little neural network. And so now it's like strengthening as this is weakening. Now, if we go through life, and if we've had this for a very long time, and then we don't have just some like thought pattern correction, or we check in with ourselves around this, then if we just leave this and we don't keep strengthening it, or we don't put active work into it, then yes, over time, if this is a really deep, strong neural network, yes, this can come back, or this can sort of like reemerge. But that's feedback that we have to return and just remember to correct our thoughts and the way we're perceiving things and question our stories again. And usually it's a pretty quick adjustment to like a sort of reset here. But if we have circumstances in our life where people, let's say you have a parent who's always telling you that you're not good enough, or diminishing or something like that, then you have to do extra work to make sure you're showing up to equilibrate that by doing this story work over here. So you have a few factors that influence it. As a general rule, for most patterns and pathways, you're not going to have it come back if you diligently did the work for 21 days and felt about it and did it, morning, evening, auto suggestion showed up. But if you're competing with a huge, really deeply embedded, really strong neural network, then it might require slightly more work, and it might require slightly more upkeep after the fact. So that's the way you can look at it and sort of like feel out your dynamic from there. And what it's so important to do is just to recognize, if I find myself telling an old story, I owe it to myself. I have to do my due diligence as a human being out of self-care and self-love to correct that story and to like clean up my thinking around something that I'm projecting over time. So excellent question. Amazing, Kelly. I'm so happy to hear that. Hello, Mondi. How are you? Hi, guys. I trust that you're all doing well. It's so cold here. Wow. It's getting chilly here where I am as well. I hope you find a way to stay warm. So Deanna says, this is the course that helped me pull myself out of depression. I'm so grateful for these tools. Thank you. That is so amazing. And I'm so happy to hear that. And I want us to really be empowered, and I'm definitely never going to say that, like, I think everything serves at periods of time. So I think sometimes when people are really depressed or really anxious, sometimes it's important to like take medication and do different things that might be prescribed to you. And to have that, sometimes we need a Band-Aid to stop bleeding for a little bit and things like that, right? So, but what I want everybody to just walk away with as you go through this course or different courses is that I want you to understand the root of suffering and pain. It always has to do with needs or beliefs, and those are the only ways we can experience emotional pain or suffering. I do think, like, for sure serotonin has an impact. And sometimes if we have like our gut microbiomes really unhealthy, things like that, then this can definitely play a role, and there can be these other components. And I absolutely do think we have genetic predispositions towards things, but a lot of things around epigenetics are saying, we turn off the expression of our genes in real time according to how we're perceiving and emoting. And there's a lot of really supportive science that backs that. And Dr. Joe Dispenza has a lot of really amazing work on that if you're ever interested in learning more about epigenetics. But what's so important to recognize is if we have pain or suffering, we get to tend to ourselves and clean up the unmet needs, clean up the stories or perceptions, do that consistently over time, so that we reprogram, and literally so many dramatic shifts happen. And Deanna, I was on antidepressants when I was 14 or 15, so a very, very long time ago, but for a few years until I learned about this stuff and did the reprogramming, and knock on wood, but I don't think I'll ever have to go back to that again. And so again, not saying that doesn't serve for specific cases and individuals, absolutely, but we want to make sure we always understand the roots of why we have negative emotion and why it can become perpetual and pervasive at the same time, so we can give ourselves the gift of like freeing ourselves from things that might not serve us. So I'm so happy to hear that, Deanna, and thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's very inspiring for other people. And Marta says, hello, Marta, how are you? You have your coffee muffin. Marta says, hi, Thais and beautiful community. I have my coffee, muffin, and PDS course binder ready to go. I so look forward to these afternoon sessions. That's amazing. Thank you, thank you. Wow, Michelle says, hi, Michelle, how are you? Michelle says, are our love languages affected by our core beliefs? That's so beautiful. Our love languages will largely be determined by the needs that we have and the beliefs we deem, the beliefs we have about, or beliefs being like, because associations are beliefs. So the more positive associations we have towards specific things of getting them met. So for example, let's say that you're a kid, and let's say you get gifts for your birthday, but then let's say every time you get gifts, your parent then complains about money and says, oh my gosh, I spent so much money on these gifts. This is so stressful. Oh, birthdays are so difficult. What's going to happen? Most likely, you're going to build in negative associations to receiving gifts because you associate negative emotion in that love language. So your beliefs about gifts are that they burden people, that they, make you less lovable, or that you, whatever stories you tell around that experience. So do you see how in that case, like, your beliefs are absolutely shaping what love languages you have? And then let's say you spend time chatting with people and hanging out with people, and they say, oh my goodness, I love talking to you. Like, it's so nice to speak to you. You might build in positive associations that quality time or speaking with people makes you more lovable, or you feel connected, or people see you, or whatever it is based on your experiences. So absolutely, love languages are affected by beliefs. Core beliefs is more about like the internal meaning that we give, but our beliefs and the positive versus negative associations we build to the different languages that are available to us through which we give and receive love play a major role in all of this. So excellent question. Okay, so I can't believe it's already been an hour. So I just looked at the time and I'm like, oh no. So I'm just going to touch on how to find a core belief at a high level, and then I really want to spend some time on like the emotional processing tool and give you guys a whole bunch of different examples, so that we can get a lot of focus on here, because it's by far the most important thing in this place, I think, in this course, and one of the most important overall for sure. So how to find a core belief? Very simple. All that you're doing is you're just tracing your meaning backwards. So, if we look at top of page 5, exercise 3, let's say you describe a situation where you felt negative emotion, or you felt emotionally charged. The purpose of describing the situation is to be able to isolate the experience, right? Not to say, oh, I had a bad day yesterday. That's good that you recognize it, but it doesn't give you much to work with. So you want to be able to say, okay, I was upset yesterday when my mother criticized me, right? Is the example you have in there. Good. So I was upset. I was upset yesterday when my mother criticized me. Good. What emotions did you feel? Okay. Get in touch with the feelings that you have that accompany the experience. The more aware we are of our emotions that accompany experiences, the more easily and quickly we will recognize when we're feeling dysregulated, and the faster we will then be able to do something about it. So if I start being really in tune with when I feel stressed or afraid or angry or frustrated, I can catch it before my thoughts have spiraled. And I only realize my emotion when I'm feeling it 9 out of 10. And then when I'm 9 out of 10 emotionally charged, I'm less likely to be able to regulate and catch my stories. Versus if I'm more in touch with my emotions, I might catch myself getting dysregulated at a 1 or 2. And then it's much easier to be able to move through that because we can question stories at a 1 or 2, right? Not, and it's much more difficult at a 9 or 10. So then you can ask yourself, what am I afraid could have happened in that situation? So let's say, for example, I think the example said, I'm afraid that my mother will say negative things about me to other family members or family friends. So my mother criticizes me, and then I think, oh, what if she's sharing these things with other people that I know? Okay, good. What meaning do you give to this, or what are you afraid could happen? What does that mean, or why is it bad? Well, people could stop liking me. I could be disconnected from people. I could be abandoned. People could think I'm unlovable. So, like, what is your specific meaning and story? And you want to keep asking yourself that question until you hit the core beliefs. And in that, you're going to find that usually it resonates with one of those core beliefs at the bottom rung of the ladder, which is exactly what we were talking about from before. So then if we go to exercise 4, the whole purpose of this, and this is like, again, a really important exercise. I'm like hesitant to rush through it because it's a very important inventory exercise. But the purpose of this exercise here is for you to recognize the entire spectrum of what happens when you're upset. Okay. And what you'll start noticing is that usually we have negative emotions, and then we have negative actions that come out of them, because neuroscience has proven all of our decisions are made emotionally. So you can sort of touch on any point within this chart, but the component or the purpose is to try to find your full spectrum of beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and actions that take place. Like, what is your personal BTEA acronym? So let's pretend for Sally. Maybe Sally believes, she has a belief that I am disliked. Okay. So let's say she has that belief, and then maybe then she's going to ask herself, when I believe this, what thoughts come up for me? So then Sally might think about, okay, when's the last time I felt disliked? Oh, it was 2 weeks ago at the event that I went to, the classroom or whatever it might be, with peers, with other people, the social networking event. And so then Sally might go, oh my gosh, the thoughts I had when I went to that social networking event and I was afraid of being disliked were like, everybody's judging me. Nobody's going to want to talk to me. I'm afraid to go up and speak to that person. Will that person want to speak to me? I don't think so. Should I talk to that person? Oh, they're going to think that I'm funny. They're going to think I'm weird. So you're looking at like all the thoughts. Again, the more you make conscious, the faster and easier it is to discover when something's out of alignment, to pick up on these things, because now your conscious mind knows that this is what happened. So next time you go to the social event, you're like, oh, I'm doing this again. Oh, here it is. Like and because you've made it conscious ahead of time, it's much easier to find. And the analogy I always give is, it's like, I say, come into my house. I'm going to turn off all the lights. You've never been in my house before. Find your way to the back door. You're going to bump into furniture. You're going to have to feel around. You don't know what's going on. And it's going to take a while. But if I come in and I'm like, look, this is my house. Let's look through it together. Let's look at where the hallways go and the tables are. And here's where the back door is. And then let's go back and repeat. I want you to go through. We're going to turn off the lights, find your way to the back door. You're going to get there faster. You're going to bump into less things. It's not going to feel so like you're in the dark. And it's going to be easier to recognize your pathway out. And so this analogy is like very specific to when we're trying to deal with subconscious stuff. If we bring it to the light of our conscious mind, we become aware, we know the path out, we see the whole paradigm and how it works. Then when it comes back to us again, we're really clear on what's going on. It's significantly easier to navigate. So I am just like, so those could be her thoughts, right? So she writes them all out. What do you feel when you're thinking these thoughts? Anxious, frustrated, sad, defeated, helpless. Like, and everybody's emotions will be different, even if the stories are the same. People can have the same emotions and stories, but they're going to be really unique. So you have to find yours. Some people might feel numb when they start feeling like that, shut down, resentful, angry. Other people might feel anxious, afraid, sad, small, insignificant, right? So you're getting really clear on yours. And then what do you normally do when this happens? What is, so if I were asking Sally in this situation, what does she normally do? Maybe she avoids people. Maybe she becomes needy towards people. Maybe she inserts herself in conversations that it might be inappropriate to. Maybe she leaves and goes home and just like numbs out and watches television. Maybe she drinks too much and then doesn't remember the social event. Maybe she, like, you could have so many different potential options, right? So write out what yours are. And then you're going to be able to backtrack this at any time. So like, let's say, for example, let's say your thing is like, you drink too much, or let's say you binge eat. Sally leaves, she binge eats food, she goes home, binges on food. If you find yourself in that position, you're going to be able to be like, oh my goodness, I must have been feeling, thinking, and believing things that triggered me in order to find myself in this action or behavior. And then you're going to know, okay, where did this come from? What was it? And you can start questioning your stories and working through it. And as soon as we change one of these parts, the actions will follow. And so if we work on the things underneath this, we can have an output of behaviors that changes what our experience becomes, right? If we work on the roots, the symptoms fade. So if you change your beliefs, you change your thought patterns, you're going to feel differently, and then your actions are going to be different just as a natural byproduct of that. So really important stuff to just like recognize and know. Spend time on this. If you haven't done this already, spend time on it, because the more aware you are, the faster you'll be able to move through these things. Okay, so I'm going to sort of jump over exercise 5 on page 7, and I'm going to dive into, because we touched on it a little bit with Rochelle's live example about something's wrong with me, something's right with me, and the different angles through which you can approach it. Okay, so then I'm going to dive into the thought upgrading and emotional processing tool. The reason I say thought upgrading, it's basically thought reprogramming. If you change your stories often enough when you're triggered, you reprogram from the thought level. And whenever we are reprogramming anything, we can come at it from any angle. If we change our beliefs, our thoughts change. If we change our actions, this can stop us from feeling like we have these core beliefs. So for example, if we feel unworthy and then every single day we treat ourselves like we're the most worthy person, eventually we're still going to equilibrate. So you can kind of like change and reprogram at any level, right? And if we change our thinking and we repetitively tell ourselves we are smart enough, we are strong enough, we are courageous enough, we are whatever, then eventually we're not going to have this belief that we're not good enough, because we're targeting all the thoughts that would be associated with not being good enough. So you can change from any point. And the thought reprogramming tool is also what I call your emotional processing tool. If you do this on a daily basis, you're going to change the whole paradigm of like whatever exists limiting you at a subconscious level. Okay, so we're going to go through this, then I'm going to answer some more questions, and then we'll dive into the next 3:30 webinar. I should have made like 2 hours for this and got you guys to come here early. Or made a double webinar for this. Anyways, so exercise number 6, top of page 9. Okay, so the goal of this exercise is to question the stories you tell yourself when you notice negative emotions have arisen. Your negative emotions are feedback, as I always say, that you're telling yourself a painful story, which is made up of your thoughts and beliefs, or you have a need that's unmet. It's usually both, but it can sometimes be exclusively one or the other. And your job is to check in. And your job is also to make sure that you always work on your stories first. Because if you don't, your suffering will confuse your needs. So let's say we have Molly, and Molly is 10 out of 10 emotionally triggered by Bob, and Bob has just made a comment that was triggering. If Molly is giving meaning to Bob's comment, and let's say Bob is her coworker, if Molly's giving meaning to Bob's comment and she's going, Bob thinks that I'm stupid, I'm not good enough, I am disrespected by Bob, I am unsafe around Bob, and I'm helpless and powerless. If she's telling like a whole bunch of stories, and this is a really important point, so don't forget this point, your level of suffering will be in direct relationship with the number of stories you have put on a situation. So see how like we had all those beliefs from Molly, like I'm helpless, I'm disrespected, I'm not good enough, I'm stupid, I'm powerless, right? Then she's going to be experiencing more suffering. If it's one painful piece of meaning or one story, then it's going to be less suffering, right? So sometimes when we do this work too, we have to dump out all of the different stories and be clear that if we still feel some frustration or shame or pain or suffering, that we probably still have more stories left that we haven't equilibrated yet or questioned, okay? So now when Molly's in that position, if she tries to go right to her needs and she just goes, okay, so what do I need? She might go, I need to go scream at Bob and I need to like take his computer off his office desk and throw it on the floor, because that might feel like it's going to bring you relief when you're really, really triggered, right? But that's not what's actually going to bring long-term relief or be healthy in a dynamic. So what she wants to be able to do instead is work through her stories first, okay? I am and I hate using the word stupid, but it's a core belief for people. It comes up for a lot of people, like in a lot of places. So first, what you do, step one, isolate the problem. We're going to use that example of Molly and Bob. What did you believe about the person or event because of what happened? What meaning did you give to it? Okay, so these are your external pieces of meaning, and you can find the internal piece of meaning as well. So Bob is a jerk. Bob is this. Bob is that. Work is awful. Whatever it might be, and then what are your internal, most so, stories and pieces? Okay, so let's say she starts and she's going to work on I am stupid. Okay, so you would ask, if you bring that to step 3, and remember, write out all of your stories and you're going to pull them each through the following steps. So can you 100% know that you are stupid? And you have to sit and feel about it for a moment and really like sit with it. And then do you have equilibrating pieces of evidence? And you want to look for 2 to 3 as a general rule. And so where am I smart? And maybe it's, oh, in this place in work or in general here or in this area of my life, and you really have to give yourself permission to look. Your subconscious mind is going to want to seduce you into thinking, no, but you are not smart enough, or you are stupid. Your subconscious mind is going to want to pull you there because it wants familiarity, because familiarity equals safety. But this is where we use our conscious mind to reparent our subconscious mind, so we no longer uphold these wounds or beliefs that are really, really not serving us. Okay, so that's what you want to start doing, okay, and finding pieces of evidence. Now, like I was saying, we can attack this from different angles. So your next angle might be, Bob's behavior determines how smart I am. Is it true? Right? Bob being a jerk makes me stupid. Is it true? And why is that not true? Okay. I need Bob to know that I am not stupid. Is it true? So see how you like externalize it and you come at it from different perspectives. And the more you get masterful at doing this, the easier it will become to unravel painful suffering in your life. If you look at I'm not good enough, okay, you might say, you know, where am I good enough? Okay, how am I good enough? Who else sees me as good enough besides Bob? So where am I good enough that I see? Who else sees me as good enough? We can use that as a little bit of a hack as well. I need Bob to think I'm good enough. Why do I not need Bob to think I'm good enough? Bob determines whether or not I'm good enough, right? And so you can question your story and your assumptions from all these different angles. And if you do this for every single story you've given to an experience, you're going to feel yourself de-escalate so significantly. Okay, and this is very powerful work to do. And eventually you'll get into a point, if you practice this tool, and I really recommend every single person in this school, if you haven't been, you practice this tool on an evening basis. Like, this is your journaling exercise every evening until you train your brain to start thinking this way. Because eventually your brain will start going like this. It'll go, I feel triggered. What's the meaning? Is it true? And it will immediately find counteracting pieces of evidence. And it will be like a 15-second process that just saved you 4 hours of suffering and another 10 hours of the destruction you caused when you were suffering by sending that rude text message or making that rude comment or not turning in your work because you were distracted and couldn't finish things in time. Like, it saves you so much time and energy long term. And at the same time, you're actively reprogramming yourself every single time that you get triggered, which is also the most powerful time to reprogram because we have the greatest likelihood at eliciting an emotional response when we're triggered. And emotion imprints the subconscious mind most quickly. Okay. So once you've then regulated or de-escalated, then your next question is, okay, so then what do I need? And what do I need from like a more emotionally balanced place? So maybe I need to communicate to Bob now, and I need to set boundaries with Bob because the way he's treating me is inappropriate. Great. What's my strategy? Well, my strategy is to go in, maybe use the conflict communication scripting course, or maybe just write out ahead of time what I want to say so I can be super clear. And then tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I'll go have that conversation with Bob. Or maybe I want to write Bob an email so that, and take some time to really sit on that email and reflect on it, sleep on it even before I send it the next day, and then know that I communicated to Bob and then follow up in person, right? Like it can be anything you want, but then what you'll have done through this tool is been able to find the actual reasons that you're experiencing emotional pain or suffering, question the meaning behind it, deprogram what was going to imprint you, because there are no idle thoughts. Like things impact us all the time. We're either firing and wiring, aka strengthening something we don't want, or we're replacing it with something new and letting old things we don't want to atrophy while we have new updated patterns and pathways for ourselves. So this is the work, right? And then at the end, once we've de-escalated, then we actually, and not de-escalated, like talked ourselves down, like, oh, it's fine, everything's going to be fine, you're okay. No, like actually did the work to target the exact roots of why we're suffering in the first place and equilibrate them. And then we get to go into a space where we follow that up by then meeting our needs and showing up for ourselves in the relationship to self, and asking yourself, what do you need? And strategizing on behalf of it is the ultimate, like, ground floor. Like, you just took yourself into consideration. Like, it's the, like, what's the word? The epitome of taking yourself into consideration, because you checked in with yourself, you wrote it out, or you took the time to think about it, and then you strategize on behalf of yourself, which is you showing up in relationship to you, which ultimately has a net very positive effect on our self-esteem as well. Okay. So I hope this makes sense. I'm going to, in our second webinar that we're going to do about this, I am going to go through this again at like a high level, and then we'll dive into like the second part of this workbook because it's so important. But I just want to leave some time for some questions here. So, so Merlin says, oh, I just answered this. Sorry, Merlin. So Minerva says, hi Minerva. What can you say about overthinking, considering all possible options and not taking action? What is the value of not taking action? Excellent question. Wow. Or fear of making the wrong move. This has come up a lot with different clients over the years. So what can you say about overthinking or considering all possible options? Number one, overthinking often represents a need that we have, and we ruminate as a strategy to get the need met. So when we ruminate, it's our subconscious mind trying to get our attention and trying to fill the bucket a little bit indirectly. So number one, overthinking, aka rumination, is usually symbolizing or symptomatic in a way of a need that we have. And it's a form of communication to us. So from a subconscious thought process. So you want to ask yourself, like, what am I overthinking about? And what need is that trying to get met? The second part of this, where you say, what is the value of not taking action or the fear of making the wrong move? When you don't take action, usually it's because you're trying to stay safe. So usually it's like the fear of a mistake when you take action. And so you're ruminating and you're trying to stay safe by not doing anything. But we have to recognize that not doing anything is an action. Obviously not technically, but like that's still a choice. And so there will still be an impact, especially over time. And so we have to like question the impact and the cost. And you also have to change the belief that's going to be in there that says not taking action is safer. Can you really know that that's true? And why is not taking action going to be unsafe long term? And look for those competing pieces of evidence or equilibrating pieces of evidence. And then you can go so far as to ask yourself, well, what do I need in order to take action and feel safer? Maybe I need emotional support from friends or family. Maybe I need a really strong plan A, B, and C and have it all written out and have strategies involved. Maybe I need to feel over prepared for what I'm going to do. If it's like changing jobs or whatever it might be, work with maybe like a career coach first or somebody who helps with job interviews and resumes, like whatever it is, you can meet your needs too, and you're going to insulate yourself. So you can, since we're speaking of that tool, you can plug things into that tool with anything that's bothering you or dysregulating you or making you feel imbalanced, and it's really powerful and will get results, and also profound awareness. So excellent question. Um, Hello, Shayna, how are you? Can you please offer a script to address habitual delayed responding? Love that. Absolutely. Um, I like that. Let me write it in here instead. Um, that's a really good one, eh? Because habitual delayed responding, because that's a big problem for lots of people. Delayed responding in relationships, right? Um, Thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's see. So, the next, hi Duncan. The next question I see is Jerry's. What should I do when I have too many beliefs triggered all at once? Excellent question. I'm so glad you asked this. So, this is what we do. We recognize that when we have so many beliefs triggered at once, we are going to be in more suffering. And this is really common. And when we feel extremely emotionally dysregulated, what we want to check in with is like, okay, chances are I have so many beliefs triggered at the same time, and that's why I feel this out of balance or this charged. And so if you're doing this work, you're doing this emotional processing tool, and you go through it and you're like, okay, I felt a little bit of relief, but not fully, you probably have more stories that you're not recognizing. So if you're like, let's say you're at a 9 out of 10 and you work on like, I am helpless, I am powerless, and then you try to meet your needs and you're like, that helped, but I'm still feeling like I'm at like a 4 or 5, go back and be like, okay, what other pieces of meaning am I giving to it? And let me work through those. And as you do, you're going to be unraveling. Like, it's like as if suffering is like this hidden thing in the water, and you relieving yourself of suffering. This is like kind of a funny analogy, but like let's say it's like all these, let's say you have a pond or a swimming pool, and there's like blocks in the swimming pool, like these like pieces of coal, and maybe the pieces of coal represent suffering. This exercise is like you going in, retrieving the pieces of coal and like throwing them, like disposing of them where they're meant to be disposed of. And so sometimes it's like you find a couple pieces of coal and like, okay, it's gotten a little bit easier, but you have to go in there and find all of them, put them where they belong, and return to that fair and balanced way of thinking, like seeing both sides. This is like a horrible analogy as I'm saying it out loud, but I want you to get the idea that like these are things to find and retrieve and put where they belong, not things which we do as human beings where we punish ourselves. It's like we had something that happened to us where we felt not good enough, at 6 years old, and here you are at, let's say, 36 or 56 or whatever, and you're still punishing yourself with those old experiences, and it's so painful and so not deserved, right? Like we don't deserve to still suffer for them. So to retrieve, we have to question, aka process, we have to equilibrate by finding counteracting piece of evidence, and then we have to put these things where they belong, which is not in self-punishment and refueling and refeeding them over and over again. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And then we look for our needs and strategize on behalf of them. So great question. Hello, Furia and Natalie. So Duncan says, I think the booklet you have is different than the one on the website. We updated it. We updated it a lot. So make sure if you don't have the updated version, which you should, because I printed this off of the website myself. If you don't, try logging out and back in, and that should give you the updated version. And I'll double triple check, but I printed this off from not my computer, because I send them off and our design team like makes them look nicer, because I'm not the most creative with making them look nice. And then so I literally got this from the website. But thank you for asking that, because it's really important. Let me see. How can I tell? What an interesting question. I love this. So this is like a deep awareness question too. So Shayna says, how can I tell if a goal is stemming from my own desire or from a trauma reaction to past experiences? And the idea that achieving a particular goal and experiencing the byproduct associated with it will gain an unmet need. I love this. Okay. So here's what I would say. Okay. A lot of our experiences and personality traits, and somebody brought that up the other day, which was amazing, but a lot of our goals and positive experiences actually come from negative traumas. So for example, like I think I shared this, and hopefully it's not too personal, but a big part of like why I probably do the work I do is because I went through struggles and I had a really consistent period of time of telling myself every day, like, if I get through this, I will never let anybody else feel this alone. And I used to say that and say that and say that. And I don't really know why. I was like 15, 16, like, but I'm sure that probably impacted and imprinted. And it's probably why I'm like so dedicated to doing what and I love what I do. Like it really fills my cup. So we can look and be like, what if this goal came from a trauma? It doesn't matter where things come from because a lot of beautiful things are born from painful experiences. It matters what our current relationship is to them. So, is your goal something where you're like obsessive about it, where you're overly attached to it, where you are using it to try to cover pain instead of deal with the underlying pain in terms of the stories and the needs? Is the goal something where, like, let's say the goal is I will have a partner who is perfect to me, is super emotionally available, and that can be great, but are you using that partner to not be emotionally available to yourself and to do something specifically or explicitly, like mutually exclusively from the outside in? And so it's more about like, what is our relationship to the goal, and are we using that to cover underlying work that we have to do, or is it something where we went through something, we have this goal and we're really passionate about it, but we're still able to meet our own cup, or like fill our own cup, we're still able to meet our own needs, we're still able to recognize that our path to achieving that goal might not be this like perfect thing, and if there are bumps and obstacles, we're okay with that, and we know that we trust ourselves to move through it. So what is your relationship to it is more important than anything else. And that is a really, really fantastic and insightful question. So just wanted to recognize that. Hello, Adrian. How are you? I like the upside down exclamation marks. So Magni says, I have noticed lately that I can feel this slight sort of guilt or shame in the background when I have positive feelings. Is this a thing? Why would that be? Yes. This is a thing because, number one, you probably have a subconscious comfort zone of sometimes not feeling that way. And so there might be a part of you that's trying to stay safe and stay familiar by sabotaging a little bit, especially like when we do a lot of healing. This is very common amongst people where it's like, wait, like what if the other shoe drops, or things like this. So that can be number one. Number two can be that, maybe you grew up in a household or a home where that wasn't normal. And so then you feel like, oh my goodness, what if I'm doing well and other people aren't? Or what if I'm and so what you want to do is you want to attack that from both angles. So why do I deserve to feel positive feelings? Do some reprogramming and finding piece of evidence for why you deserve on a regular basis, because everybody deserves to, because I've been working really hard, because I'm a loving person, because I'm here to help other people, because I'm a great mother, because there's so many things you can say, Magni. And so you can start by that, and then you can look at like, why does it actually help other people when I have positive feelings? Because sometimes we feel afraid of being emotionally disconnected, like, oh, I'm used to maybe people around me are suffering, well, and I don't want to be not suffering with them. No, why is it good that I'm not suffering with them? Because I can share things with them that will help, because I'll have lots of positive energy to bring to those interactions and uplift people, because I will XYZ. So look at all those different angles, and then why is it safe? If you find that it's a subconscious comfort zone thing, why is it safe to have positive feelings, right? And write out all the reasons why, and get yourself into the habit of thinking and perceiving that way, and that will benefit you tremendously long term as well. So excellent questions. Okay, so Julia says, hi Julia, do you have advice if one finds it very difficult to know what one really desires because there are blocks to even daring to dream and a lot of confusion? Absolutely. So this is sort of what we were going back to earlier. This is a really common pattern I see for individuals who have like a lot of controlling parents, or who at a young age really wanted something maybe different from their family, different from their surroundings, and they kept like getting their dreams rejected. So in one way or another, it's like my individuality, my dreams, my uniqueness is not worthy, and it's safer to suppress. And when it's the most prevalent or pervasive, it's usually when it occurred at like a young age. So if that's something that you're struggling with, something I would do every single day is I would return to thinking, okay, so there's a few different approaches, but I would kind of put them all in together. Number one, I would repeat that exercise daily. I would make it a journaling exercise and try things out and like see what feedback you get. So like let's say you're looking at your 7 areas of life and you're looking at the first part. And and um and so I would look at like career, for example. Okay, what would I want in my career? And maybe you're like, I have no idea. Like I don't even know where to start. So maybe what you do is you set the intention. Okay, tomorrow morning I'm just gonna like ask people questions about their career. I'm gonna look online about people talking about career. Maybe I'll take like a career test. Just you have to gather information at first and see what you feel. And then you could say like, what would I want from what I learned today? And you can just start like writing some interesting things that you liked or things that resonated with you. For example, you might say, I realized that like I think I might be interested in being in a career that makes me interact with lots of other people or helps people or that's quiet and I have a lot of time alone. Like it could be anything, right? So you're just gathering data every day and you can do a little bit of research and you're basically establishing the relationship between your feelings about something and feeling your feelings, and what that says about your desires or your needs. And so you can start by doing that. And then over time, as you start developing more and more information, you can also target like the core beliefs you have. So it is unsafe to be an individual. My dreams will be rejected anyways. I don't deserve to do what I want. My family didn't get to do what they want. Maybe your parents were immigrants and you always heard the story of how much they hustled. And so you take that on as yours and like, oh my gosh, I have to work that hard. Otherwise, I'm like, not carrying on, whatever it might be. We have so many different variations of stories. So you can work on reprogramming those stories too. But what I would recommend is as you gather data and establish that relationship between your feelings or desires and your feelings and your desires or needs, to keep fine tuning and checking in with yourself, like, and to keep looking at what limits you from truly getting into a space of self expression. Like, do I write about this career? Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love to help people. But what comes up for you? Is it like, oh, no, 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 but I can't do that. Like, that's too difficult for me. Or like, check in to fine tune any other painful beliefs that come up and then work on the reprogramming of those beliefs. And over time, you're going to start giving yourself permission to dream and to see and to look. And even if we don't do everything that we set out to do, it's so much better that we set an intention and we moved in that direction than we never gave ourselves permission to look in the first place. So it's such an important thing. And often, as soon as we do this, people start achieving. People, I would say, one of the biggest barriers to achieving what we want from our lives is never giving ourselves permission to look. And sometimes things change over time. Sometimes you're going to think, oh, I'm going to work in this area, and you end up doing something similar, but that you like even more than what you originally planned. So remember, these things are not like something to box you in; they're to open you up, and to remember to not attach you too much. Oh my goodness, I just realized it's 3:32. Okay. Um, I've noticed for me, among several reasons to withhold permission, is because when you fail to post permission, I rob myself from the privilege of living in the imagination of desire, which will otherwise live as long as I am, rather risking dying earlier in motif. Wow, that was very profound. Um, okay, beautiful. So I wish I could talk about this for so much longer. We'll jump in. You guys can ask more questions about this stuff if you want to in the Q&A. So sorry that I'm a little late. I guess it doesn't matter because most of you are here. But just a huge thank you, thank you, thank you to everybody so much. All my in-person interactions finish the core belief women only see me as an object and I interpret things that way. I try to collect contrary evidence, but it never holds up over time because of the way my interactions always go. How do I reprogram? I'm going to answer that because it's a great question in the next thing if you want to jump over there. Okay, so thank you guys so much. I hope you're having an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you in 2 seconds in the next webinar.